It's so good, you guys. Sup nerds, I'm Tom. It actually feels a little weird to not start a video that way, so here we're talking about Kanban EV. This is the reprinted edition from Eagle Griffin. I did do a review for the driver's edition, I think it's called, that was from Stronghold a while back. So this review will be, I guess I'm not going to assume you have seen that video, so I will do kind of an overview of my thoughts on this game again, as well as kind of comparing it to the old edition. But I do think this game is, right off the bat, I'm just going to tell you, it's pretty phenomenal. I think this might be my favorite Lacerda. The only caveats are I still have yet to play Vinhos and the Gallerist. And it actually has been a while, like over 3 years since I've played Lisboa. I do remember liking that one an awful lot. So maybe that one's a contender, but I'm pretty confident that right now it goes like, Kanban, Lisboa, maybe then Escape Plan, then On Mars, and then CO2. I don't think I left anyone out there. One of the main reasons why I'm such a huge fan of this game is I think this is heavy done right. This is complex done well and fluid. There is obviously a lot going on in this game, but it all is like intuitive and makes sense. And this thing that I always do, everything does kind of meld together, and this thing relates to that, which relates to this, but it like in an intuitive way that makes sense. Like, I love how the core mechanic is this worker placement thing tracked down the middle, right? The board is split into 5 sections. Each section works a little bit differently, but you will place a single worker in one section, and the sections will trigger from top down. In the old edition, it was going from left to right, but like here you go top down. And if you put your worker in the top section, you go before whoever is in the section below that, right? But there's also 2 worker placement spots in each section. If I put on the topmost worker placement spot, I will go before you, who's on the bottommost worker placement spot. But I will have 2 actions, whereas you have 3. I get to go first, but I have 1 less action. You go second, but you have an extra action. That just flows so well and makes so much intuitive sense. But in the very last section down here, the 5th one, is mostly just like a wild section. It lets you pick any of the other 4 and do actions there. But it's the very last section, so you go last, triggering down, and you have 1 less action than the other spots would, which makes sense because you're getting that benefit of it being wild. If somebody's, people are blocking you out from other spots over here. It just feels like that level of intuition in the game is so congruent throughout the entire process, every aspect. I do feel like the engine and the machine of the game is so fluid that you can kind of take a section, like how exactly does the pace car and moving around this track thing here work? You could kind of say, if I need to look that up, and you look it up in the rulebook, and it's like pulling that section of the game out and expanding it open and figuring out all the details and making sure, okay, I think I get it. And then you collapse it back and slide it right back into the machine and everything makes sense. Like, there are very few things here where I go, why is it that way? Granted, with a game this heavy, that'll come up sometimes, right? But very rarely is that the case. And I even think they cleaned up some of the fiddly nature from the original edition. The only thing that is a little bit odd to me. I think I get it. But at the end there are certain times when you will trigger a meeting, right? Where you have there's scoring cards that are out there, and then there's scoring cards in your hand, and you have to pick one that goes out there, and you have to place your token on it. And then you can go, and you each go around placing a token on a card or passing. I feel like, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I think we do have the older edition somewhere in here. I could probably look it up. But I think they cleaned that up a little bit, because I thought before you had to play the card. You had to either play a card from your hand or claim a card. You know what I mean? So it's like, I want to wait to play this card because I've had it in my hand. I've been looking at it this whole time, so I want to score it. But I can't play it down and play a token on it at the same time. But in here it says that has to be like your first actions. You have to play a card, and if you're going to place a token, you have to place it on that card. You could have cards in your hand that you don't want to score at all, so you could play it down, but then you can't place a token at all because you have to claim your card if you played it out. But really, after your second or third turn in the game, you will get a surprising amount. you will be blown away by how easily you understand this extremely heavy game. Like, pushing cars out, putting car parts on cars to push them out here, and then get them onto the pacing track so you can take them. And you need to have designs so that you can even take cars, or you can have designs so that you can upgrade them and make the parts even better, which scores them even higher. And if you need to get car parts, so you have to come over here. But then other things like I love how every single area has a track. Has a 5-step track to advance on. Once you advance to a certain level, you're certified and you get some bonuses. And then when you advance all the way, you'll get points and other bonuses. Like, again, if people are somewhat new to this, heavy type of game, it's an easy thing for someone to just kind of be like, well, listen, there's a lot going on here that I don't really understand, but I understand tracks. So I'm going to just advance on tracks, at least at first. So, the first couple of turns, just sit there and really just focus on advancing the tracks. And throughout those couple of turns, you'll see other people play and you'll get it a bit more. But what you did was pretty good, because advancing on tracks is a bunch of points, because not only do you, if you get all the way to the end, you can get 5 points per section, but you can also get, every time you get certified, once you get that halfway point, you move up on the certification track, which will give you a bonus and will also make you go first. I think that, like, things like that, it's heavy because there's so much going on and so many things, like, feed into each other, but they're all so intuitive. It's never like, but you can also do here, and then 2 of these, but then 3 plus the number of players minus this, but only on Tuesdays. There's very few rules really feel like they come out in that clunky sort of way. Like, and everything's so, like, again, there are rules there's very few rules that only apply to, like, this piece. Like, everything you gain it now, but you can't spend it on the turn you gain it. So, car parts vouchers, which is just a wild car part. Books, which is just a wild advance on a track for you. Or it's an additional advance on a track for you. Banked shifts, which is just an extra action you can use later. And speech tokens, which are things you use to claim points later. All of those you gain, and then at the end of the round, you will add them to your track. Like, it all just, like, flows together, and all these little locks on your board of upgrading. It makes sense that, like, well, this is a really good, this garage gives you the best bonus, so you have to unlock that garage. And if you want to hold more car parts, you have to unlock the car part thing. You want to hold more designs, you got to unlock that part. It just flows so well together. The only thing is that there's Sandra, this sort of AI character in the game. I guess you could argue that this part is a little fiddly, because you do have to, move her to a certain part, and she does evaluations and either penalizes you or gives you rewards. And when she gets to the end, that triggers a meeting, but only when the pace car circles around here. That's what triggers this is a score. And when she gets to the end here, she triggers, this isn't called a meeting, this is called a scoring, end of week scoring. And then when the pace car wraps around here, that's what triggers a meeting. And it's when there's 3 of these, or 2 of these, or vice versa, 3 of these, or 2 of these. Some things like that could be considered fiddly. Like, I would understand if people say they're fiddly. But again, by the end of the game, like, it totally makes sense. It's fine. But the issue that I have with Sandra is there is nice Sandra and mean Sandra. And for some reason the rulebook just tells you to use mean Sandra, and then says nice Sandra is like a variant. And I have never played mean Sandra. I always like nice Sandra, just because I do not like the idea of losing things. She will come to an area and say, oh, do you have 2 or more designs? No? Well, then you're losing points. Everybody starts at 15 and loses points for not doing the thing that she is, asking you to do. Now, granted, she only does that to the person who is the furthest back on the advancement track of that section too. So you maybe don't need to worry about it. But I hate things in games. I hate the idea of losing in general. I spent resources, I spent turns, spent time. I made my plan, and I got this thing, and now it's just gone. It just is gone. That always bothers me. But also, like, this does feel like a do it or else mechanic, Well, you have to be on top of these things. I have to make sure I have at least 2 designs, or at least 2 car parts, or whatever it is. And that just feels silly to me, I would much rather be like, hey, look, I got a bonus. I got extra points. And even then, it's not like just giving you tons and tons of stuff, because, again, you have to be the furthest on the track, and you have to have the stuff that she's asking for. And you will gain 1 point for every bank shift you have over 5. So if you have 8 bank shifts, you'll get 3 points. Now, granted, that is kind of hard to do. You can do it, and you probably will do it more towards the end of the game, but it just feels good to get those little bonuses versus, Sandra. Now, I know it's just my play style, but also I get this weird thing. Whenever I'm teaching it, my friends are always like, no, let's do mean Sandra. Come on, we're gamers, we're hardcore, we know. I'm like, just because we're gamers doesn't mean it feels good to lose things. I just I just hate that aspect in games, especially when it's random. This isn't really that random, but there are some games where there's just straight up random negative effects, and I almost always house rule just no, get rid of that. That benefits nobody. That just ruins the experience for everybody at the table. All right, so moving on from my thoughts on the game to a little bit more about this edition in particular. I know most of this is, I think, just like a pumped up edition in terms of components and graphic design and things. Like I said earlier, you go top down instead of left to right. I don't know if that really makes much of a difference, but there is tons of iconography on the board. The board is a bit busy, especially at first. I mean, again, the longer as you play the game, eventually you stop seeing the busy. I mean, it is very pretty. It does look like an actual factory. Like I've worked in warehouses and stuff, and they do have this tape all over the floors and things like that. And you do have little people running around and stuff, like it does make sense. All the little office buildings and stuff. It's kind of like Scythe in that, where like if you look real closely, you're like, oh, look, there's people right there. That does add to the busyness, but I mean, I guess it works. It is a very intimidating board at first. But after a while, you get used to it. But there is tons of iconography. Like, you will definitely go back and look in the rules for the specifics of things, but just little reminders of like, oh yeah, that's right. This section has this section, and if I'm certified, it'll have this section, And even like the little certification thing shows inside the section that you're certified in. And oh wait, so if I'm certified in this section, not only do I get this bonus here, but this little thing on my board says, okay, that's the lock I get to remove for being certified there. All that stuff comes together. Again, all the components are pumped up. I think in the older edition, all of the car parts were like just cubes. Here, they're like these screen printed hexagonals. I think they did have different car shapes in the last one, and I think they had double layered boards. But, so many things are just really, everything, all the things are screen printed, including the cars. The books are super thick, and the question mark tokens are huge. Like this is about, as advanced as the game could be, as deluxe as the game could possibly be. There is a solo mode, which I never really play solo, so I can't comment on what the solo mode is like, but if you like that, that's in here. There is also a expansion that I didn't play, and that's a lie, kind of. I mean, I have gotten the chance to play the expansion since filming that. The expansion doesn't come in the base game box. You do have to purchase it separately, but it's really cool. It's called the Charger expansion or something, where you can get all of these green tokens. You get them as an action in the administration department, I think it's called, the very last one. And they are points themselves, but they will also each give you a special ability in each of the 5 sections. Like, for example, if you gain one and put it in the administration department on your little board, well, now the administration department, you have +1 action. Well, that's really strong. And this expansion is super strong. Like, everybody's going to be bum rushing to go to administration really early on. And, upgrading the administration section is probably like one of the first ones you're going to do, because that way getting more of those green token things is now kind of free, right? It's also a little bit too powerful, especially if you play with nice Sandra. Now, I know I said, oh, I'll never play with mean Sandra. I really don't want to play with mean Sandra. I might play with mean Sandra if I'm going to play with this expansion, because maybe they'll both kind of mitigate each other. Yeah, mean Sandra's really annoying, but this power-up expansion, whatever it's called, the Supercharger expansion, I'm losing things from Sandra, but I'm gaining more benefits from those little green things, and there are a lot of points. I'm losing points from Sandra, but I get a lot of points with the green things. So yeah, maybe they will balance each other out. So maybe I would try Mean Sandra as long as we're playing with this expansion. And I would, again, play with this expansion with Nice Sandra, but you'd kind of have to let everybody at the table know, like, listen, it's pretty OP. So everybody's going to be bum rushing towards administration. So whoever goes first is kind of a big deal. But anyways, now let's go back to whatever I was saying before. So, no surprise, I pretty much already said it. I 1000% recommend this game. I think everybody should, well, I'm going to take that back. Not everybody should have this in their collection. Everybody who's into heavy games should have this one in their collection. Because that is the only real negative that this game has, or really games like this in general have. This one probably has it the least, is that these games have to hit a different category for me. I do like heavy games, but they are not going to hit the table as often as medium weight board games. They just aren't. For one, the setup time and the time to play and the rules explanation, just time in general takes forever. the type of people I can play it with is less, right? Because not like there's people who like board games but who just aren't into this type of thing, and that's fine. I remember playing the older edition with one of my buddies, and he kind of said to me afterwards, he's like, "Yeah, I don't think I like games this complicated," and I was like, "Okay, cool, good to know," but that's not unexpected. That this is just not going to be for everybody, you know. So that is the only negative, the only caveat that I have. So while I do love this game, and I'm definitely going to keep it in my collection, it's one that I can't recommend without saying, hey, if you like this type of game, then I highly recommend it. Does that make sense? Anywho, there's going to be a purchase link in the description box down below for you to get yourself a copy. There's also going to be a link down there for Game Toppers. That's this awesome tabletop that we're filming on right here. This actually goes on top of your table. This is not a full table, so it's much cheaper. It's portable. You can get playmats and stuff. Super dope. Also, down there's going to be a button that says subscribe, so that way if you subscribe to our channel, you will never be bored. Anywho, there's going to be a link in the purchase